Today, we take you to Kenya in East Africa. With 54 million people, it is smaller than Nigeria with 200 million people and Egypt with 100 million people. Despite that, according to the Disrupt Africa, it ranks first on the amount of VC money invested in that country, with over $149 million invested in 2019. It may have something to do with being the first place in Africa to have widespread mobile payments, which today is at 75% penetration rate, making it the country with the highest mobile money penetration in the world. Today, my friend Mutembei, CEO and founder of an AI startup in Kenya called Fastagger, joins us. He highlights trends in AI on the continent and talks about his vision on using AI to address the unemployment and build more technical talent in Africa. Hi, I'm Dana Yao, your host on the Emerging Markets Tech Startups podcast. While traveling to over 90 countries, I was inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit across startup communities in Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. On the show, we bring you stories from entrepreneurs, startup ecosystem innovators, and investors. We discuss what makes these markets culturally and historically unique, local trends, local challenges consumers and founders face, and the opportunities. Let's get started. And I'm so excited to have you on. And we're old friends, so this conversation won't be different from the ones we're used to having in Nairobi in The Alchemist, which is our favorite spot. So tell us about yourself. Your history is fascinating, and you as a local Kenyan, there's so much to tell. So you tell us.
My name's Mutembei Kariuki. Interesting fact is that Mutembei means traveler or one who likes walking. And Kariuki actually means back from the dead.
Wow.
So, I grew up here in Kenya. So was born in a small peri-urban town. It's actually, was known for producing some of the, worst criminals in Kenya back in the 90s. But I think I was really fortunate that my parents really worked to, focus us on education. My first ever interactions with technology was through my dad, and he got some computers that were being thrown out by one of the companies, as they do every couple of years, and somehow within the computer there was an AI program. It's called Eliza. I think it's one of the first ever chatbots, AI chatbots, and I used to play with it all the time. Talking to it, it was giving really horrible answers. And today, Elon Musk's company, OpenAI, just released a really, really powerful AI API, conversational API, and which is so different from the way that was working. And I just slowly, got interested in technology through that experience. I was very interested in tech and being an innovator, and also using that to solve problems. And so sort of fast forward to now my bachelor thesis, which was on a company called Digital Divide Data, which was providing digital jobs for young people doing transcription. And they were funded by, not really funded, but actually they were given a software, a grant, about 250,000 by Microsoft. So you see how technology was, yes, it was creating value for Microsoft and creating value for Digital Divide Data and for their customers in sort of digitizing content, in terms of transcribing, and then also changing the lives of these young people because they were learning very basic skills. Instead of needing to have a 4-year degree, they could have, a few weeks of learning how to use, Microsoft Word, and bam, like you have a job, you're getting a bit of an income. You can use that to, to pay for your college tuition or to start a small business, back home, and things like that. And so this was really interesting for me when I was doing my thesis.
Where did that spark?
So what can be done with technology to transform people's lives more, right? And so 2 years, came back to Kenya, joined an impact training organization. So I ended up training at YALI, the Young African Leadership Initiative, by President Obama, former President Obama. And again, it just still got me thinking. And so I quit. That's when I quit my first job, because I'm like, I gotta set up a company and a tech startup. And we went and we got that place at a pitch competition at the iHub then. So I was part of the iHub community then. But then, the challenges of building a startup, it's not about winning a pitch competition. So, but then those connections gave me a lot of ideas. So we were focusing on data. So we were seeing how can we create, like analytics that can be able to connect. We were saying we'll be the Uber for connecting clean tech to consumers, right? And we'd build an interface that would be able to chat with people using USSD, and that data would sell those profiles to clean tech companies. We were sort of getting some sort of movement and some sort of traction, and then Kenya went into election, and so I ended up saying, okay, I still want to be developed to stay in the tech ecosystem, but how can I do it? And so I joined GIZ. So I applied for GIZ, joined GIZ, and set up a program called.
You explain GIZ?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So the GIZ is part of the German Development Corporation. So it's like a private public entity of the German government.
And what problems were you solving at GIZ?
A lot of conversations about job creation. How do you create jobs in Africa? Because if we don't create those jobs, the prediction is by about 2050, the population in Africa will be about 2.1 billion. And the average age today is already 18. So, we'll be having a lot of young people. And so how do you create opportunities for them while automation is coming? While, automation in agriculture means, just a tractor coming in to increase, productivity will mean that the seasonal employment of young people in the rural areas, who are the majority in Africa, will be gone. So what will happen to them, right? And so I started really thinking about employment, how to create employment. And so
we share similar fears on this side of the world of AI taking jobs. I think I'm a bit more optimistic. If you look at the Industrial Revolution, that was another time where technology just exploded. And yes, it probably took away some jobs, but it also created a whole new market. For example, the invention of the steam engine allowed more global trade, the creation of the light bulb, which enabled more productivity. And lastly, the telephone was also invented at this time, enabling communication in long distance, and so much more. So if we learn from history, innovation and technology has always brought us forward, of course not without negative externalities. But I'm curious to hear how that realization of wanting to focus on unemployment led you to tackle the problem.
The professors was talking about how AI was going to disrupt everything, but everybody was talking about how it's going to disrupt in Japan, in Europe, in the US. We were about three Africans there, one from South Africa, one from Cote d'Ivoire, and myself. And we were 100 people, and very few people talked about Africa. And I remember getting up and asking a question when they were talking about the disruption of AI and saying, what's going to happen to Africa? We're going to have 600 million young people on the continent, right? Between the ages, of 15 and 35, right? In 2050. If automation is going to take away jobs in Japan and the rest of the world, and we already don't have many established industries in Africa, what's going to happen? So he didn't have an answer. He said, well, education. And I'm like, okay, how do we educate that amount of people in such a short time? And so I came back to Kenya.
And unemployment, like you said, is already a big problem in the market. Can you talk about what the current rates are?
Yeah, so Kenya, it's anywhere between, especially youth unemployment is anywhere between 60-70%. That's youth unemployment, right? General unemployment so youth is considered 15 to about 35. Right?
So tell us, how is Fastagger tackling this problem of unemployment?
We've decided to focus on, using as Fastagger, how do we want to create opportunities for the millions of young people on the continent who are unemployed to be able to get into the AI data labeling market and be able to earn an income and at the same time upskill them to create, the data sets and the AI that is needed to solve African problems. But one of the big challenges still remains internet access, right? So right now on the continent, they're saying there's about, population-wise, in about 2018, there were about 200 million people who had access to the internet, and by about 2025, in about 5 years, there'll be about 500 million people who will have access to the internet, right? Kenya, so right now we're about a population about 1.1 billion people. So that's saying that roughly half, but that's still a problem, right? Because approximately by 2025 will be probably 1.5, billion, and that's only a third of the population which will have access to the internet, right? And then speeds again are a question. But then I see that as an opportunity. Having this 500 million people having access to the internet, and a lot of them will be young people, is a huge opportunity for us, right? Because AI needs tons and tons of data. They say that the space in 2023, the space for third-party labeling services for AI will be $4 billion, right? That's the market size. But the interesting fact is that last year, it was projected that it would be $1 billion by 2023. And in the space of just 1 year, because of all the changes, it's going to be 4 billion. So that's, crazy growth, right? That's about like, and in 2028, this market was only $150 million. So that's a 26x growth, right? To
And it's
4
only
billion.
going to keep growing as people realize new use cases that
Exactly.
AI can be used for.
Exactly. And that's where we have a benefit. We're lucky as Africa. And because also the smartphone penetration and internet penetration is growing, right? Again, it'll be about 66% by about 2025, right? And so again, multiple smartphones, meaning more access to the internet. And
What is your vision for having Fastagger enable more internet access to people?
we've been very, very fortunate that during the COVID times, we have not invested in any physical infrastructure where people would be in. So now we're working with young people who have access to the internet and laptops at home. But eventually, we do want to reach a point where we're actually able to help them. By doing this work, they can afford to pay for owning a machine, right? Or owning their phone, right? And what that will do is that besides them just doing this labeling work, they'll be able to own phones and get access to the internet. And this is like a door to all the kind of knowledge that they can get. Because we've done a partnership with a company called Liquid Telecom, and they have a platform called 21st Century Skills. So right now we have about 100 people working on our platform through a partnership with the government. So the government has a platform called Ajira that connects young people with their digital jobs. And so we've become a partner for providing digital jobs. And so we got access to about 170 of them, and already 100 of them we've given them, about 70 of those we've given opportunities to earn an income. And I think some of them have earned up to like, $150 in a month, through opportunities on the platform.
How much is the local Kenyan making?
So I can tell you per year, they say it's about $900 a year. So let's break that down to about, that's average.
Is that enough
That's
to live
average.
on in Kenya?
Yeah, it's not. I mean,
So they're earning more than what they would normally be earning, basically,
yeah,
from data labeling, which is more flexible work.
yeah. So because the space is big, right? So they can work with us, then they can go on Upwork or Fiverr or another platform and get another additional income and another additional income. So we're complementing, we're adding to the income sources that they can have. And now with our collaborations with Liquid Telecom, now they can also upskill themselves. Because the vision we have is bigger than just labeling. We see this as labeling is the beginning of AI, right? Any company which is going to be doing AI also on the continent will need the infrastructure around that. So that's cloud. And so you'll need cloud engineering. And so on this platform, they can take courses around that to get them introduced to the space, right? And as they're doing AI, they're getting an interest. These are really smart young people. Their interest is being picked around, what is this? What am I actually doing? I'm tagging cars, I'm tagging this, I'm tagging that, right? I'm labeling this. What is this?
And are these college graduates, or these are just young people who have never been?
So we are finding that it's a mix. The tragedy in Kenya is also that a lot of people who have university education have not been able to get jobs. So there's a lot of underemployment, right? So these young people, some of them are university graduates, and maybe they're doing this to fill in like a gap in their income while they're in school, or to pay for their school, or because they don't have a job, right? And others are, just, finished high school and maybe did some certificate course or diploma course, or just haven't done college, but this is an opportunity they've seen. And others are in university. But we see this as an opportunity that can go to people who are beyond that. Because right now we're only reaching the people who have access to computers. We've created a proposal where we are approaching some organizations to have a project where we could be able to grow, and we could be able to come up with partnerships where we get a manufacturer of laptops to, and then a financier to, get these young people to have the machines. And as they do work, it pays for their machines. And this can also happen with mobile phones, right? There are different companies which are coming up with different ways of innovating around like a hire purchase model where, you get your phone and you do something on the phone, and
I was going to, and talk about the latter part of the vision. You said, once they do the data labeling work, that will get them interested in maybe higher level, becoming a developer or machine learning engineer.
Yes. So the idea around this is that in a couple of years, even within the continent, we'll be thinking about how we can use AI to solve many challenges, whether you're a company or whether you're trying to impact agriculture or healthcare. And so the idea is that already right now, they're doing this labeling. They are getting these skills on knowing how to label data appropriately and things like that. And then now we are sort of nudging them in a way, behavioral economics sort of, right? Nudging them to incentivizing them, right? That, hey, there's a downtime between a project. Why don't you do this course on the 21st Century Skills platform, just as an introduction to AI? Nothing technical, just a couple of videos about what AI is. You get to learn about computer vision. You get to learn about NLP. Text analysis. Just introductory videos, but it piques their interest, right? And then you say, hey, okay, there's this certification program for, it could be Azure, being an Azure data scientist, or ML or something like that. And then you pick the interest, and then you say, hey. And so we've been having conversations with Liquid Telecom, who have the platform, and they can do this. And then we've been having conversations with Microsoft, where they're willing to give vouchers to do some of the certification exams. And you see, now we'll have professionals who now, when companies will be needing the infrastructure, people and the talents to do cloud, then you have people who have been training over the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years while they're doing some of these things, right? And now they'll have those competencies, right? And now the idea is, as a company, as Fastagger, we can now eventually have an AI as a service offering to companies, because now we'll have the expertise of creating the data, and we'll have worked with so many use cases, and then we can offer now this. So you continue doing your core work, and we will help you implement AI projects, and we'll have these young people who over these years have gotten better and better, right? Because of course initially we will work with engineers who already know this, but then they'll be working in, sort of the sort of tacit, and I learned this a lot in Japan, tacit knowledge is way more important, right? Of you have through apprenticeship, right? You've worked with people and then you get to better and better at something while you're doing things on the side. And COVID is showing that, right? You do your online classes, do practical work with someone who knows something better. And then what that also will lead us into is that we will be able to be like the uh, sort of reference of like the AWS of AI APIs on the continent, right? So we will have labeled data sets because that's a big gap on the African continent, like labeled data sets for different use cases. And we train those models, right? And work with these young people and then give access to companies and other organizations using this. So, and so this is sort of the vision we see. So now they'll be labeling data for the continent, creating AI for the continent, solving problems such as, diagnosis in healthcare, agriculture insurance using satellite imagery, which has been labeled and then put in a machine learning model to do something, you know.
I can see this definitely leapfrogging us. What are the challenges of developing AI in Africa? Because like the vision makes so much sense. And what's stopping it from just this exploding tomorrow?
The biggest challenge is always data, right? Like for example, right now, a lot of companies, like for example, for text analysis, for building chatbots sometimes, or for emails, checking emails and spam, people used a lot of the text from the Enron scandal, that were released, emails were released freely, and that's what they're using. But for the continent, if you go on the internet even and just look at continent, general continent, even on faces, right? If you're building a model around, facial identification, it's very hard to find data from Africa. And so that's one of the big challenges, right? That's definitely one of the big challenges. Two is, sorry? Oh yeah, two is access to funding to a large extent, right? Because we've literally talked to some, investors, and they've told us, no, I don't believe AI can be done in Africa, so I can't invest in you guys. Yeah.
What? Someone actually said that?
Yes, because they say all the AI talent is in the US, in Silicon Valley, right? And then,
Got it. So for them, it's a
yeah,
talent issue. They believe the processing. So obviously, you guys are collecting the data, but they don't necessarily believe the processing
yeah, is
is
going to
going
be
to
able
have the
to be
expertise.
done here. But it's fascinating for me because I'm not looking short term. Definitely, there are some challenges. One of my co-founders, our CTO, right? He's MIT. He did his master's in MIT. He was also working on machine learning while there and media. And then now he's at Georgia Tech, all top 5 institutions in terms of AI globally, right? And so that's just one person who's Kenyan, who's born in Kenya and who's now getting AI education. And we're working with him. We're in a remote world, so we are building models and building platforms, together. My other co-founder, she's amazing as well. I mean, she's a very heavy quant background, has done consulting, and now also, has a master's in, data science and analytics. And right, so yes, there's you can say there's a bit of a talent challenge, but there is talent, right? It's just that we need to identify it and focus it, in a certain way, and then support it. Like it's very easy for Google to snap up our CTO, but he's like, no, let me focus on this. Even our COO, it's very easy for her to be snapped up by another company that's doing data, right? But then we're like, hey, we want to create an impact on the continent because we see how much impact that we can have doing this.
Are there any moments that happened to you that made you even more committed on this mission?
Well, this was actually a hard conversation I had to listen to once by someone. It was I don't know, but it affected me. But it's I don't know what you can judge, or whoever's listening can judge whether it was good or bad. But someone once told me that their worldview was this: that they look at the world based on cultures and their contribution to the world. And they look at the culture that has emerged in the US and the innovations that they've done. And when this person was telling me that, well, they were growing up, and they were learning science. They were learning physics, chemistry, biology, and they'd read the names of the different Nobel Peace Prize winners. Sorry, not Nobel laureates in the sciences like physics, chemistry, and things like that. They were all from either Europe, US, parts of Asia. They'd never seen anything good coming from Africa in terms of contribution to humanity. And so that stuck with me, right? Because I was like, if we want to feel like a real part of the human community and the global community, we also have to show what we can contribute to the global economy.
Well, we live in a world where media and history is orchestrated by a small group of people, and it's not that folks in Africa have not contributed it, it's not recognized. So don't give up, and when there are times, call me so I can remind you, and we have this recorded. Talk to us a little bit about the challenges, either as a founder doing AI in Africa.
Really a lot of challenges, like there's a lot of knowledge gaps, of course. One of the realities of successful ecosystems is that you need to have maybe a number of people who have managed companies and teams of hundreds of people and more as your mentors and advisors in helping you come up. And so because the industry is such as an infancy, we don't have that many people. Two is because, and this is something that has been happening as a big conversation in the Kenyan ecosystem over the last couple of weeks after Black Lives Matter, and now there was an article on the Guardian newspaper about the biases on the continent from international VCs towards Black African founders. And a disproportionate amount of funding was going towards, or the data was indicating that it was going towards international founders, particularly from the US, who set up companies here. And so people are feeling that there was people are saying that the data is indicating that there's some sort of bias. But our VC said it really directly the other day that, money is about trust, right? Investment, VC is a high risk, high reward game, and it's about trust. And because again, the data, it's actually like building an AI system, right? If you underfit the model with only certain data, right? As the case that has been happened with like maybe researchers who are building a facial recognition system. Actually, there was one that was built by a camera company that had a lot of Caucasian faces with Caucasian features. And so when the camera was launched in Asia and was taking photos, there were many errors, different times where it would refuse to take a photo because it thought people were closing their eyes, right? And in a similar case, if you look at, I know it's ridiculous, but I'm now looking at this as a problem within the VC space where most of the data for VCs about success of a tech startup, what the data that has been fed in is usually from Silicon Valley. And what are most of like the $1 billion companies? If you look at the founders, they're a certain demographic, right? The founders, they are not, people born and grown up in Africa and educated in Africa, right? So it's a data issue, right? It's a bias issue because of the input. But the beauty again of AI is that it shows us these challenges and tells us that we need to fix them. So there's a trust issue that needs to be worked on. And so it's one of the challenges that we have. Yeah, it's based on the data. So
this speaks to something I've been thinking a lot about recently. AI algorithms can be biased, but that bias can be changed by the data you input. Humans are biased, but that is so much harder to change.
Yes, that's a challenge. Yeah. Because an AI algorithm will not feel attacked when you present it with the new information. But unfortunately, a human being, like no one wants to be told that they're racist or they're being biased, right? So we're having a lot of conversations in the ecosystem of how how African founders can be trusted, because it's a trust relationship. Because VC investment is like a marriage. On average, marriages are like maybe 10 years these days, so maybe it's the same, right? But you are having that, you'll have that kind of like commitment because it's a lot of trust that's been given to you. So how do you start building more trust? And then the conversation has also been, how can you get more local investors? So that's now a challenge that we're having in the African ecosystem, because a lot of our high net worth individuals or platforms that will be putting money in VC to go into early stage high risk ventures, the mindset they also have is, again, a data one, because traditionally they've known that investing is in land, apartments. The big financial institutions know that the safest place is to put in bonds, government securities, and maybe international stocks. So the whole idea about putting money in startups, tech startups, which, it's a crazy idea. It's not proven. It's not a proven model. It's not like a public company who you can look at their books over a couple of years and make a prediction where they're going to be. So that high risk angel capital is only emerging. We have a few networks, like there's one called the Victoria Business Angel Network. There are other high network individuals like the current minister for ICT in Kenya, who've been in angel investors, but it's still not at the level where it could really grow the ecosystem. So we need a lot of education in the ecosystem. And so that's a challenge for a lot of startups, because the idea is that, you are expected to have traction by the time you go to an investor, but you need money.
That's some of the challenges, and you probably have another, but the important question, how can people help? Like, now we've heard your story, we've heard what Fasttagger's vision is to change not just AI in Africa, but employment in Africa, education in Africa. So for people who are inspired by this, how can they best help?
Okay, so definitely one of the things is time in terms of talent. If you have certain expertise in tech and building businesses, so giving time. So at least for us, for one, we really want to create some sort of a mentorship or career development sort of program for a lot of these young people, just to inspire them to think about like that they can actually achieve a lot more. So that's one of the things that we see as a way to help, like time wise. And then the other one is expertise wise, like and networks wise, because we are looking for more and more projects, right? AI projects to work on, right? So for us, it's like, hey, if a company has an AI project and has images that they want labeled, or audio files that they want labeled for NLP or any of that, then we would love to deliver those projects, for the company. So we are looking really for customers, right? So help in terms of networks and putting our name out there and such. And this can also be for other startups, right? Not only us, but for us, that's one of the big things, right? Networks, because a lot of times we'll go out there, and actually we've deliberately not put even on our website where we are located, right? Because again, there's always that fear. But the reality is, like, actually a lot of AI is being labeled in Africa and in Asia and things like that. But yeah, we didn't put that on our website. So having those, the good thing is, like, when those networks open doors for us, because again, they create trust, and we will make sure that we don't we don't fail on that trust and deliver really good work. So that's one. So connections and networks to opportunities to get customers. And then of course there's investment. We are in one of like our funding rounds. We're seeking investment, particularly, and for our grand vision, which also includes like getting data, labeling our own data to solve challenges in agriculture and infrastructure and in healthcare. And so that takes will take quite a bit of money. So those kind of introductions to like investors.
We hear you, and we're definitely going to use this episode as a way so you don't have to repeat yourself, because all this is amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I always feel like every time I talk to you, I learn something new about you, about the world, about Africa. So I can't wait to share this with the world. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us today on the Emerging Markets Tech Startup Show. If you have questions, comments, requests for me to cover an emerging market, or want to be connected with today's guest, leave me a comment in the reviews or find me on Twitter @Diana Yao. Until next time,